Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Joy of Planting. I am proud to present tonight's very special guest, Dr. Dan Griffith. How are you this evening? Or
I'm
AKA
good.
Pithy Dr. G.
Yeah. Um, I only use the doctor professionally, so you can dispense with
No, I
that.
know. I was just. Facetious is the wrong word, but I was just
Yeah.
being, overly formal because.
Yeah. I know. Hello, friends.
Yes. And we have kind of a little side project here. Not the usual plot that I've been working on this stream. So I know you wanted to discuss kind of routing that sort of thing on this plot and kind of the ideas of what you're going for here.
Yeah. What I've done here. So this is supposed to be a Lynx collaboration with some of my Dirty Ankle Mafia brethren, and especially between myself and Justin Seabuck because he and I are not in the major design competition, so we have the most time on our hands in terms of designing. But obviously, everyone else is more than welcome to play around and contribute. But so yeah, Justin actually had the idea of wanting to do sort of like a modern type links, and he was kind of putzing around with it and said he deleted like 5 or 6 course files. So I figured, oh, what the heck, I'll take a crack at it. So when I'm starting a new course, and like most people, I have some kind of vision that at least gets me excited to start, and it evolves over time. But so I looked at some of the modern links in Scotland that aren't like really old, and the one that kind of spoke to me the most is a course on the west coast of Scotland called Machrihanish Dunes. So I looked at some pictures of that, um, and just kind of went from there. And I basically what I did is I took this plot and um, I set the random hills up to like 80 because I wanted it to be pretty rugged terrain. So it's not like not a links like St. Andrews or Carnoustie or something where if you zoom out, it looks really flat, and then there's more humps and bumps the closer you get in. I wanted some big global elevation change. So I actually took to Google Earth and kind of studied the topography of some courts of some areas that are suitable for golf, and I found that if they basically about I don't know 1,000 yards inland from the sea, it's like this high plain, and you see lots of farmland, and then lower down as you get closer to the water, it just kind of you start to see these irregular dunes, and so it basically just kind of slopes down to the sea. So I tried something like that.
Yes, something that kind of traverses a little bit of different uh,
Yeah,
types
and
of
then sort of
land.
like if you pan around to your left, I put in a couple large hills just to
Mm-hmm.
so like yeah, there you go. It's like to the right of it's like where 9, 10, and 11 are.
Gotcha.
If you find those holes.
Yes.
So if you just like move backwards where 9, 10, and 11 are. So this is an out and back routing, so it's not near the clubhouse. Sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
So like 10 and 11 are kind of curving around this giant hill, and then I put another huge hill to the right of that, and you know, no reason in particular, but just in terms of like what scale to make them, I just looked at a few links courses on Google Earth that I think have interesting looks to them, and just kind of went with there as a guide. But obviously that's subject to change as I work more. So yeah, and then I just went out to looking for interesting places for golf holes and tried to fit together a routing of 18 holes. And because it's a links course, I was willing to do some unconventional things because a lot of the old links anyway
Yeah. Speaking
they
of
have pretty
which, we have our
quirky writings.
back-to-back par threes that crisscross each other.
Yep,
That
12 and 13.
that looks interesting.
So you might wonder what the patio sets are there for.
I assume that was how you were marking green sites. I assume.
Yeah, that's how I mark my green sites. They're pretty unobtrusive, but since they're light colored, they show up from a long distance. So,
Yeah.
and there's probably a whole bunch that don't have holes going to them because those are just other green sites I considered.
Gotcha.
Uh, but yeah, like I saw 12. 12 is like a shorter par three that kind of goes along the coast, and then 13 is like a super long one that goes over the top of it essentially, but it's downhill. So
Gotcha. All right. Well, taking a look at this one, I like I like a lot of the holes you have laid out. Oh, granted, I'm not sure exactly the kind of the environment that you're looking for yet on the kind of around this one. But I do
right.
notice that some of the holes are kind of far apart for how I would normally think of like a links course.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think
Yeah,
like
it is pretty spread out.
yeah. However, like all the individual holes all occupy what I would consider kind of interesting pieces of land. Like I could
Mm-hmm.
definitely kind of visualize holes where most of these are.
Oh yeah, Dave Bavakian. He's a resident Scot here. I was kind of looking in the area of Kintyre. If I'm sure you know that, but yeah.
Yeah. It looks like my phone is very behind on my stream. I don't know how I can.
Okay.
I'll have to see if I can get it caught up. It's like, oh yeah, I'm missing most recent chat stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But oh well. We'll figure that out. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I can at least I can use Streamlabs and stuff to follow comments. I just won't necessarily be as responsive because I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
second screen anymore. That's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I think that's something I tend to do is because I'm just sort of, out looking for holes and then I'll find, holes I like on disparate parts of the plot. So sometimes when I do this technique, I tend to spread them out a little bit.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. And I'm assuming since you've marked all of your green sites that was what you started your kind of design process with.
I'd say yeah, for the most part. But I'm not like necessarily dogmatic about it. So sometimes I guess sometimes like I think 18. Well, so I found 17. That was one that if you zoom in on 17, that's like a short par four.
All right. Yeah, I see it.
Um, yeah, and so the green's like kind of on like a shelf.
Hmm.
Um, so then I just kind of saw that dune next to it that's like really elevated. I'm like, well, that'd be pretty cool to have the 18th tee up there. And so that one was more like, a green site to just make that majestic tee shot
Yeah,
workable.
definitely looks good to me. And I suppose the lamps are marking T locations as well.
Yeah, I think because I found that 18th tee, and then I didn't. Then I had to leave, so I just threw a lamppost down,
Gotcha.
and so it's not like it's part of my system or anything. I just needed to put an object down there
Whatever works.
with a tee site. Um, so yeah, obviously a lot of these holes are some of the holes are ones that I'm more excited about than others. Other ones are just kind of, well, you just got to make everything connect. So you're naturally going to be a little less enthusiastic about some of them.
Mm-hmm. One sec.
Like 2 and 3, I made 1 and then 4, and then I was like, well, I need a couple more holes, so I just went out with 2 and back with 3.
Nice.
So that one's a little that's a little
It's okay. I like the spot of three. That one.
yeah.
I think that one could potentially be interesting.
Hmm.
Like I'm definitely seeing something I'll do some doodling on it because I can.
Yeah, let's go for it.
I'm definitely seeing something that kind of almost like a cape type tee shot that juts
Hmm.
out over this uh, what do you want to call it? Kind of shelf there. Obviously,
Hmm.
it'd flatten all that out, but
Yeah, yeah.
actually, I have to go see what the distances involved are. All right, actually, yeah, that works perfectly. Where the further right you go, the more kind of chasm you have to carry, but that gives you a better angle to that little tucked kind of area back there where the green is.
Hmm.
Yeah, that could be interesting. So I have no idea how much work you actually wanted to do on this, or if you just wanted uh, to kind of show it off and chit chat about it a little bit.
Oh, yeah, a little bit of both, I guess. Yeah, I thought about putting a hole in, but I didn't quite have time. So
Ah, no worries.
yeah, I think like the one that I'm probably like I think I mentioned 17. That's one that I'm thinking I've kind of got like the most defined idea in my head. Um, and then I don't know, maybe we could look at 9 because and you could because I was kind of debating between two green sites.
All right.
Um, so
9 is, let's see.
yeah, it's that
Okay,
par
so it's a
three that's
par
furthest
3.
away.
So you're
Um,
debating between making it like either a really short
yeah,
one
you can
or
see the other green side I was considering there.
like
Like, because I mean, what'll
perched up.
probably happen is we'll bring probably bring the ocean a little closer
Mm-hmm.
so that this is actually a seaside hole.
Yeah, makes sense.
Um, so it's kind of like I got the green sort of like in a little catcher's mitt there, and it's like 190 downhill. Or you could make it really short and just have the green like on this little point. Um, so I ended up taking the further green site just because I don't know. I guess I liked it a little better, and it makes 10 like it makes the length of hole 10 a little more. I don't know,
Yeah,
fit in where it does. I guess.
yeah, because 10's in a good spot. So I suppose it depends also on like what the various other lengths of your par threes are.
Yeah.
Like if you had
So I
another
think there's
short
like
one, you wouldn't necessarily want to do.
yeah, right. Well, so 12 is the shortest one. It's like 150 something.
Yeah,
And then 13 is like
long.
260, but it's insanely downhill.
Yeah,
Um,
and
and then I
then
think the 7 is the other par 3. That's like
220 as well.
215, 220 downhill.
Yeah.
So,
It's actually, yeah, nine's kind of a good. I think I like your second green site there on
yeah.
9. The one that you're debating, I think, has a like there's a nice little perch there, so it could visually look nice. But just
Hmm.
routing wise, I think the current spot makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, before before I accidentally go and delete all of the um, delete all of the distance markers by accident because I do that all of the
Hmm.
time. I think I might just throw a quick sketch down for number 3 because I kind of I can see something there. So
Awesome.
I wanna just it'll be quick and ugly, but it'll work. At the very least, throw down like a quick fairway just so it doesn't accidentally go away when somebody plays around with distance markers and just says, "Oh yeah, I'm done with this. Delete all," because I do that constantly.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I've made that mistake plenty of times.
And then you also wanted to talk about, I think, like your green styles, stuff like that.
Sure, and we can do that either here or we could go to your Schoolhouse Rock course and work on a green there. That's fine too.
I was gonna say we could probably just do a quick little bit of
Do it,
both.
do it while this is going on.
Yeah.
So, so you're angling the green sort of right to left slightly.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think so. Or at least, at very least, yeah. I want
So do you kind of? I didn't notice if you measured it off, but like you
I
just kind of free-handed that green.
I usually will measure it off, but in this case, I'm
Yeah.
just going really quick and dirty
Okay.
on this one. Mainly, it's just
It's all right. I'm gonna delete it all anyway. So
oh, I mean, by all means, this is just a
I'm
really
just
really
kidding.
quick. Like this is really sloppy. It's just
Right, right.
it's
But
just
yeah, it's like I did all three of my holes on Silver City, and like because I knew you were gonna you know shine them up and everything, so I think I designed like all three of my holes in like an hour, so
yeah.
so they were pretty sloppy.
Exactly. And this is the same thing of like this is the bare minimum of okay, there's stuff here that demarks what my idea is. And it's enough that you can hit like a practice shot or two just
Yeah,
to
yeah.
test the concept idea.
I mean, while we're talking about collaborating, I thought maybe that's another thing we could talk. What's because since you have another collab course coming out shortly,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
so would you like? I know like with Silver City, we kind of said like, okay, you're the you're kind of like the visionary behind that one, so
Yeah. The
you're the one that kind of ties everything together. Did you, Matt, and Jeremy do something similar with your course?
uh sort of. It wasn't nearly so kind of laid out as in the same way, but I think
Okay.
but Matt was the one who had the idea to do the collab, and he had like a general idea of what he wanted to do. So it just kind of ended up naturally falling that he was the one who was feeling inspired and had like an end vision. So we just kind of let him. Uh, I basically said, hey, you should be the kind of final editorial decision on this one.
Okay.
But it wasn't nearly as like everything wasn't laid out ahead of time. It wasn't as organized as the Silver City one.
Yeah, where it's like, okay, we have a certain number of holes
Yeah,
and
it
all
was a lot more freeform, or somebody would just pick it up and said, "Oh, I did these things on it," and just pass it back.
that. Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
it's definitely different because there's lots of times where I'd be looking at it and go, "I don't know what Matt wants to do here. I'm just totally guessing."
Mm-hmm.
Like, or it's should I work on this bit here? I don't know if this is finished or if this is, if it's just like a placeholder and he wanted to do something else with it later, that sort of thing. So it was, I mean, it was a lot of fun. I
Mm-hmm.
definitely enjoyed it. But for most of the project, I also had no idea where we were going with stuff. But it
Yeah.
kind of came together toward the end. It was a lot more free form than I've gotten used to based on just our kind of collabs and stuff,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which works fine for for three people who have different styles, but we all kind of understood where we were going, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it certainly wouldn't have worked with six people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, here I'm just gonna go. I'll save and exit this one quickly, and I'll just go jump over to Schoolhouse Rock because I think that's kind of the golf show equivalent of the that your baking show stuff where
Right.
you have one already out of the oven so that you don't have to wait to cook it. So yeah, here we have a hole that's basically done except for the green. This is a perfect time to talk about green stuff because something needs to be done with this one. It's pretty flat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I will be the first to admit that greens are probably one of my weak points. I just
Mm.
sometimes I'll find a really good green already kind of sitting there in the terrain, or I'll try to
Yeah.
make one that flows and follows the terrain that's already there.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I tend to. I'd say I generally tend to like yeah what you did right there, just like taking that little ripple that was already there and just accentuating a little bit.
mhm,
I do that all the time, I find, and then I just kind of work from there, and in a way that makes sense with how the rest of the whole plays. But
agreed. And I also definitely how much work I do on the greens is definitely going to be dependent on A, like what's already there, and B, like how hard I think my green needs to be based on the whole concept.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this is a pretty short par 3 with without too much danger to it. So like you can
Mhm.
get a little more wild with the contours on this one. I might bump this up a bit.
But yeah, sometimes I don't know, it just kind of depends on, I don't know, the mood I'm in or something. Sometimes I just won't even pre-flatten the green area. I'll just throw down the shape of my green, and then I'll just use the flatten tool exclusively. Like I won't raise or lower it. And I'll just kind of, again, kind of accentuate the surrounding contours to create like little, tiers or bowls or humps and things like that. And then I'll make minor edits just to make it play the way I want it. Like I'm pretty compulsive about hitting practice shots into the green and what have you.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely the same way. Anytime I do a change of like anything on a course, like okay, we'll go hit a shot, see if it works. We'll go hit a shot, see if it works. So I don't tend to do a whole lot of play testing at the end. I'll do it as I go a lot.
Yeah.
Like I think there's a really great tough pin location on that corner. Like put a little ridge there, and
Yeah, and I'm pretty much always multi-pin my greens as I go along because as I'm sculpting it, I'm thinking about where the different hole locations are going to be, and you're testing to all of those. Um, so I definitely I don't just design my course and then put in 4 pins at the end.
I'll do that on some of my holes,
Yeah.
or rather, like if I see a green already there that I know I want to put in there, then I'll do that pretty early. But most of the
Hmm.
time, if there's not just like a really natural green site already there, then I'll basically kind of smooth it all out. Not so it's totally flat, but so it's mostly flat, and then just go do the green at the end once I have a better idea of the what the whole concept's gonna be, where everything sits, and everything's fine tuned enough that I know what kind of green I want. Also, I just realized like I am way behind on the chat. Let's see. Oh, Eric's here. Hey, Eric, how's it going? And Matt, and Justin, and Stefan. I don't know what your real name is, but
It's
hello,
Kevin. Kevin.
Kevin. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Kevin. Where it's definitely harder to just come up with like a brilliant green concept if you're starting from flat, but to a certain extent, there's not always one that works for me sitting there. So a lot of times it's, oh hey, I need to raise this green site up a bit so that I can so that the bunkers in the front fit nicely and everything's framed and all that sort of stuff. It's like, okay, well, we're just going to go raise this, and it just makes sense to flatten the green site out so that I can do all the macro sculpting and then just tweak the green afterwards. Let's see. Also, I tend to use the raise tool a lot for this,
Hmm.
as that kind of, you can add complexity to stuff without just overriding things.
Right. Right.
At least that's kind of the way I view it. If I want to take complexity out, I'll go really heavy on the flatten tool. If I want to add complexity, then I'll use the raise tool. So all of a sudden, this is starting to, get to the point where the green surface is getting kind of slopey, and a
Yeah,
significant portion of it is yellow and red. All of a sudden, this really short, easy hole becomes interesting because you gotta throw your shots around.
right. And I think that's like how, like, you know, sometimes certainly like, less experienced designers when they're getting feedback, a lot of times they'll be told their greens are too big.
Hmm.
Um, and there's nothing wrong with big greens per se that are, say like 40 or even 50 yards deep, but um, like this one is, it's on the slightly
Yeah,
big
it's
side,
big
but
for
not
the
that
length
big.
of this hole,
Right, but you're creating all these compartments and stuff.
so it'll
Um,
play smaller.
and yeah, so like there's lots of unpinnable space, right? What's boring is when you have
Hmm.
just a huge green, but it's got like a 2% slope throughout it. Um, so it's good to have. I love large greens, but I like them to have some, like some bold
It needs to be a
contour
large
in it.
green with a purpose.
Right.
Like, one of the biggest things I see with a lot of rookie designers is they build greens that, there's big greens and then there's big greens where or I'll make some big greens that, oh hey, this green's 30 yards by 50 yards. Like, that's about as big as I'll go. To me, that's
Yeah.
huge. And
I think I had one green on Shelter Island that was 60 yards long.
mhm.
And it was actually on a par three, so it made the whole play like very different distances depending on the pin placement. So like you could have anything between like a lofted gap wedge and a delofted 8-iron on the hole. So
Yeah.
it was number 6 at Shelter Island. So like to the front pin, it plays like 122, and then it's like 167 or something
Hmm.
to the back pin.
But yeah, and that's funny. I think it was Dion was making a comment that that's definitely him. And yeah, I think you're right there, but you're also certainly not even remotely alone in that. I think at least, you know, 75% of people getting started will kind of default to making their greens really big to the point where it becomes kind of an issue. Where
Right, and
the
sometimes it's just like you don't think you don't think to use the measuring tool, like because I never draw my greens freehand. I
yeah,
always I always I figure out more or less how long I want it to be, or if I'm just like finding a green site, I'll say okay, I'll measure it off and say okay, what's reasonable.
yeah. Again, and it's like I've gotten to the point where I've done this forever, and I consider myself pretty good at being able to
Mm-hmm.
eyeball stuff, and I'll still catch myself like freehanding a green, and then I could just go double check it with a measuring tool, and I'm like, it's 100% larger than it should be. It's like, oh
Yeah,
god, this is so far off. How did I go so wrong?
yeah.
So it's really easy for stuff to get away from you, and it's just like there's no right or wrong answer as far as green size goes,
Mm-hmm.
but it needs to have a purpose, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's and a lot of great holes kind of break the rules. So don't just think like, oh, like
Yeah,
if it's a long par four, have a big green, or a long par three, have a big green. And that's a short hole, have a small,
yeah,
right? Because there are plenty of counter examples. Like so, for example, the second hole at Pine Valley is like a 360-yard par four, and the green is enormous, right?
yeah,
But like the second shot is like this forced carry that's steeply uphill, and the green has tons of little slopes and swales in it, so it works. And then if you look at like say the road hole at St. Andrews, it's like a 500-yard par four, and the green is like super skinny between the bunker and the road.
of course it's also because it was designed as a risk reward par 5 and was later converted to a
Well,
par
yeah,
4.
and par is meaningless, of
Yeah,
course.
par is a number.
It's basically the basic strategy of the hole is if you want to make a five, if you want to play for a five, you will get your five, right? But if you want to make a four, you bring six into the play.
Yeah,
and so whether you say that's a par 4 or a par 5 really doesn't make a difference.
Exactly.
Um,
But
but
that's
and the other thing is, like, for like if you think about, like, just in terms of real golf, it means that, kind of like the sort of a middle, like a 15 handicap or something, right? Who's not going to go for that green in two, they still have like an interesting third shot. Like, you've got to think about where your second shot's going to go, um, and that your wedge shot is going to be taxing. So,
exactly.
but that's the thing about rules, that
Yeah.
you can always find a counterexample.
Yeah.
Like on a good course in real life. Obviously, there are plenty of counterexamples with bad courses, but
Yes. I think the distinction is, by all means break all of the rules, but break it with a purpose.
yeah.
Like there's but it's your bad examples tend to come from, I don't understand why this is kind of a rule, and you just do stuff without thinking about it. Or it's, yeah, I don't know.
Mr. Vinegar says find a new green, say up closer to the next tee.
Find a new green up. Oh, for 3 you mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that green's way back there, or that tee's way back there. Yeah, and I think this is kind of a short hole anyway. I'm just gonna do a quick. We're gonna do a quick flyover just to see what the. Yeah, just get an idea of what this landing area is. So yeah, because it's. I want to make you take on that corner a little bit, but once you do, then you have like just a little pitch into this green. So I might want to bump that back to like a full wedge distance. Like well, about 150 actually could work. Yeah, let's look into that. My phone has bumped over to some random stream in French, which is fun. I can't get it to stay on my stream. Also, there is a very thought-provoking question. What are the rules?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's the
I think
usual the usual bromides about golf courses.
Things like a course should be par 72 is a good example of, yeah, that's a good rule of thumb, but there's plenty of great courses that aren't par 72. Realistically, it's that whole 72 is a nice round number, and you can't go too far wrong with a par 72, but a par 72 isn't necessarily going to be your best course for the land that you have. So yeah, that's I guess a good example of something that's a rule, but you don't necessarily need to follow it all the time. The real rule there is,
it's like, why? It's just like kind of conventions that have developed over time. I mean, like, it's like, think about where does the 18-hole round come from? It just so happens that
St. Andrews had 18
St.
holes.
Andrews which originally had 22 holes, and they decided to combine a couple of them. Like the first British Open, or the first Open Championship, was at Prestwick, which was 12 holes at the time.
Yeah.
And they just played it 3 times. It was a 36-hole tournament. And it wasn't until like they decided that, like, okay, like, we're going to adopt the St. Andrews way, that they expanded it to 18. And, I think all the, the finer points kind of followed from there.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, okay, how many you have to have 4 par 3s.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
Yeah. So I guess rules might be the wrong word, and convention might be
conventions.
the correct
Yeah,
word.
Conventions or guidelines is probably a little accurate.
So basically, it's that whole thing of break all of the conventions as long as it makes the round more interesting and more fun.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're breaking rules and it makes your course worse, then don't do that. Yeah, if there's no purpose behind it, then like again for the par 72 for example, by all means you can go and route a par 72. However, for the piece of land that you might have, there might be a superior course
Mhm.
kind of laying out there for you to find that just so happens to be a par 70 or a par 73 or something like
Yeah,
that. So, you know, don't go with a par 72 that will make your course
right.
worse just because you feel you need to have that number, but
I think, and like especially in like the UK,
mhm,
so many of those old courses are like, you know, have pars of less than 70.
yeah.
Uh, because like I think Mr. Vinegar might be able to correct me on this one, but Swinley Forest is a course in England that's like Harry Colt, who's a famous English architect, he called it the least bad course I'd ever designed. He was a pretty modest guy,
Yes.
and that's a par 68,
Mhm.
and it's like I think it's like 6,100 yards or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
But yeah, so I guess that's kind of the yeah, break all of the rules if they do something interesting or yeah. So
and usually like I don't know, I think maybe it's a little easier for me because like I read Golf Club Atlas all the time,
mhm.
just generally a nerd. But if I can find precedent, you know, on like a real great course that does something, it's pretty easy to justify. Like, you know, I had those two crisscrossing holes, right, on the
Mhm.
routing we looked at before. Well, the old course at St. Andrews, the 7th hole and the 11th hole cross each other. So
Yeah.
it's like it's really if you're like thinking of something unconventional, it's still pretty easy to find.
Yeah, it's
You know,
almost to the point where Scottish golf is almost defined by its quirkiness, where to the
right?
point of like in order for it to really be a Scottish links course, it almost requires quirk
Yeah.
because
Well,
they're
and
all
part of it, yeah,
designed long
and
before we had the power to standardize stuff, with
exactly.
land
It's like the
moving
people who
equipment.
were laying out the earliest courses, they didn't know
Yeah, and
what
there
the
were no
rules were.
conventions yet. They're just winging
Yeah.
it.
And I'm gonna put down the sequence of pars at Pacific Dunes in the chat because it's pretty wild.
If I remember, it's nuts. I don't remember what
It
it
is.
specifically is, but
All right, so I'll do it. I'll do it. I got it right here. So
all right.
this is the front nine I'm gonna put in the chat. So it's 4-4-5, 4-3, 4-4, 4-4. So one par five and one par three.
Yeah.
Here's the back nine.
Doesn't it have only like two par fours on the back or something like that?
Yep. So 10 and 11 are both par threes. Then you play a par five, then a par four, then a par three and a par five, and then 16 is a par four, and then you finish with a three and a five.
Yeah.
So the back nine has three par threes, or excuse me, the back nine has four par threes and three par fives and two par fours.
Let's see here. Yeah. And again, it's that whole thing of um like, Pacific Dunes is obviously a renowned course. It's not like the decision to come up with a crazy
Yeah.
routing
Well, and
like
I
that.
think I think Tom Doak. I've heard him interviewed about this.
Yeah,
Like
it's make the best holes
he
you
said,
can.
well, I think originally they had another routing, but then they walked like an alternative one. He and like the other, you know,
Hmm.
some of the other people on his team, and like, and they were like, "Oh, that's great. We should do that." And then he says to the owner, he's like, "Let me show you the sequence of pars that we just walked." And they're like, "Whoa, that's wild." But they're like, "Well, but if it's that good, we should." He's like, "If you think it's the best course, then go for it." So
Exactly. So yeah, I guess it's the don't be afraid to do something fun or interesting or unique because it isn't standard.
Ooh,
Is the
I wonder if I can. I wonder if I can guess Mr. Vinegar's favorite course. It's got two par threes, and is that Ely, Matt? Mr. Vinegar? That's got two par fours and 16 par fours and two par threes.
yeah.
Yeah, I got it.
Boom.
I have no life.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess it's that whole thing of, especially if you're starting out, you know, it's the you don't have to follow all of convention, but maybe pay a little bit closer attention, and you'll kind of you'll get a little bit of a better feel for when it is or isn't appropriate to just completely throw convention out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's lots of unconventional bad courses and fewer
Yeah.
unconventional good courses. But those
I
unconventional
think,
good courses
yeah,
are
certainly
awesome.
like when I do it, like I was saying, I'll try and look for like a real thing. Like
Yeah.
if I want to go, if I'm considering like a really weird, like maybe a non-standard green shape or something, um, where so like I'll kind of look. I think some of the good ones to look at are like Alistair McKenzie's courses because he like made some boomerang greens. So did George Thomas.
Hmm.
They
George
just made
Thomas
his
was the
course
one
at
who did
Riviera.
Riviera and Bel Air,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he was a big fan of boomerang green.
And a donut green.
And obviously, yeah, I think that was the only time he did it though. Was six at Riviera.
To be fair, I only know of two, and one is like what TPC San Antonio or something,
I
which
don't know about that. I think Tara Eady I think has a like a green with a bunker in the middle of it.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah,
I suppose it.
it's not a it's a. Hey Terry, sorry, we're just nerding out about unconventional pars and stuff.
Yep. Also, my phone isn't working like it usually is, so I can't follow the chat as closely as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's nothing wrong with a donut green. There's one on the other collab that I've got coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that. It's like, oh, there's their homage to Six at Riviera.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, but it's like, don't just do it for the sake of doing it. Like,
Yeah.
do it because it makes the whole like better or more interesting.
Yeah. Like if you feel like a donut hole will make or a donut green will make something interesting, sure, throw it in there. Should you make 16 donut greens on a course? No. That would be awful.
Right. But I've been actually like on one of my current projects. I'm actually looking at a lot of the Cypress Point,
Hmm.
and because a lot of them have like kind of off, slightly weird shapes. Like they're just not ovals, basically.
Hmm.
Obviously, Pete Dye's done a lot of that stuff. Um, so, it's good to kind of study some of the real ones if you're kind of looking for ideas.
Exactly.
Although I think some of Dye's later stuff is a little weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, Pete Dye's stuff in general gets a little weird, I think.
It does, but I think when he was he was the like kind of the original rule breaker.
Yeah.
And so when he was like doing all that weird shit in the '60s,
Hmm.
or like when he originally did Sawgrass, you know, I think it was cooler Harbor Town. But then like I don't know, I've never played Whistling Straits, but like that. Have you ever looked at the 18th hole at Whistling Straits? It's like
It's been a while.
the green it's like a 490-yard par four, and the green is this like giant clover leaf.
Hmm.
So yes, I know. Yeah, man, he's the original American rule breaker. I'm not including like James Braid or something. Some the ancient Scottish guys.
Yeah. You can't count the guys who design courses
They
before there were
didn't have
rules.
any rules to break.
Yeah. Like old Tom Morris invented like modern course architecture basically. So he's not a rule breaker. He invented the rules. That sort of
All right.
thing.
Well, I think the boss is gonna kick us out of Discord here. So.
That is fine, and I've kind of I've hit a decent stopping point here where we had a good conversation about just general thoughts on architecture, and I have a brief outline of or a rough outline of a hole in. So yeah, I think that works for me. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Uh, it may be a little bit of a short episode, but we'll make up for that here shortly with a crazy goat ranch. So be sure to tune in for that. And thank you for stopping by, Dan. Hopefully we'll have you on again here soon.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. See you shortly.